Hello everybody, I'm Gwen Campbell-Mindes. Welcome to Gwen's Bookish Ramblings. So book 3 of Mary Herbert's Dark Horse series. So this one picks up 20 years later, as some of these books are wont to do. The thing is, this particular book is about Gabria's daughter. That is the Gabria who was the protagonist, the heroine of the first two books, Dark Horse and Lightning's Daughter, but this is about her eldest daughter. And what happens is that Gabria's daughter, Kelene, basically is a magic wielder, as they call them in this particular universe. Very blunt that. They're not witches or wizards or sorcerers. They're just magic wielders, which, I mean, there's something to be said for being clear about what they do. That she has the talent and capability of wielding magic, but because of an unfortunate incident when she was a child, she was about 12, 13 years old, and she decided to try to use magic to help break a horse. Now, horse breaking is, it's a thing that nomadic clans who practically live for horses, it's a thing that they have to learn to do. Horse breaking is a time-honored and very skilled affair, tradition, whatever you want to call it. Because, of course, in order to ride a horse, you first have to train the horse, but in order to train the horse, you have to get the horse to calm down and listen to you and accept you. And the thing about horses is they're very, very big animals. And so if a horse doesn't want to let you ride it or do stuff with it, it's not going to let you. That's why the whole bucking bronco thing is such a big deal, because a horse is a very large, very strong animal that will not put up with you doing things it doesn't want, which means you have to, as they say, break the horse. Now, that can be... The thing about horse breaking is, if done properly, it's not a horrendously cruel thing, but it does involve exhausting a horse and basically pushing it until it accepts that you're the one in charge of the herd and that it should do what you tell it to. But some horses are just ornery and won't be broken or won't be broken properly or well or what have you. Kelene decides she wants to use magic to do it, and the horse basically, flips its lid and falls over on top of her, and she winds up with her foot being crushed. And unfortunately, the clan healer is away, and magic still cannot yet be used to heal, because, of course, all of the information about that kind of thing was lost a couple hundred years before in the city of Moitura, which is more pertinent than you'd think. And so Kelene's foot is crushed, and for the rest of her life, she has this... and ever since then, she'd had this limp because her foot had been, mauled. So she's basically got a gimpy foot now. And the whole thing soured her on the concept of magic. She decided that it was, too difficult and she couldn't handle it properly, and she gave up on it and became bitter and angry and decided that the only thing she wanted to do was ride horses, which is weirdly ironic because, of course, it was a horse that crushed her foot, but, we don't always make the most logical choices about these kinds of things. And so the book opens with Kelene trying to ride in the Endurance race, which is a big marathon endurance horse riding race that, you go up and down and over and through the woods and across the plains and through the river and up and down and through the canyons. It's a whole thing. And so the book opens with her trying to ride it, and in the process, we meet various characters. We run into Syed and Tam, who we remember them from Lightning's Daughter, but it's 20 years later, and Syed and Tam wound up getting married, and they have a son. Um, and Gabria and Athlone got married. Well, we knew that at the end of Lightning's Daughter because they did, but, they have several children. And everything is hunky-dory and awesome and fun and fantastic, except for the fact that Kelene is angry and bitter, although she loves riding and is in this race to win it. And so there's a side bit where they wind up going down this box canyon because a rockfall has blocked off part of the path and nobody's quite sure which way to go because now the path has been covered. So, one guy heads off down the wrong path in the canyon and the others, because they're not sure, just go after him because, well, if he's picked the right one, then the last thing you want to do is be the one who went the wrong way and be even further behind. And they stumble across, in passing, a burial mound. The two riders who are, the nameless side redcoat characters, one of them falls into it and his horse's leg breaks, which is unfortunate because when that happens to a horse, you have to kill it. Because horses don't understand that you have to keep them, are too big to be kept still. And horses have to, it's not really healthy for a horse to lie down. If a horse is lying down, that usually means something is wrong. So you have to get a horse to basically be standing, not putting any weight on its bum leg, and keep it still and not in trouble. The fact of the matter is that a horse with a broken leg is gonna die. So you might as well put it down right then. So Kelene winds up, there's a whole bunch of things, and Kalene's main competitor, Rafnir, winds up, one suspects not entirely in malice, causing her to lose the race because Kalene's horse really, really hates crops, and so Rafnir pulls out a crop to urge his horse along, and he's about to whip his horse when her horse sees it and flips out, and they both lose the race to this other guy who was not going to win. And that's sort of, that whole thing, this race and all this stuff, it sets the stage for where things are. And what happens is that following on the heels of the race, of Kalene's disappointment, of setting up how everything's going great, a plague breaks out. And it is, in fact, it turns out, in fact, to be a supernaturally caused plague by the end of the book, that there's the god of death, Lord Sor, there's a priest, one of his priests, a couple hundred years ago decided that he wanted to become immortal, so he found a way to suck up people's life force and use it to keep himself going, as one does. And so the title of this book, City of the Sorcerers, comes from the fact that Kelene and several of the other magic wielders, because they've got the Honuli horses, which are bigger and faster than anything else and can therefore get places faster, they head to the city of Moitura, the city that used to belong to the Sorcerers before it got burned and razed to the ground. They go there in the hopes of finding some sort of magic cure because they don't have... It's a long shot, but everybody's already dying. They don't really know what else to do. And they wind up being chased there the whole way by that priest who, was in the burial mound that I mentioned. And when they opened it out of sheer unadulterated curiosity, because there's this burial mound that's been sealed with magic, and what is this? Well, they get chased the whole way there, and when they get to Moitura, they finally wind up talking to the Korg, which is, do you see there's this lion over here? The Korg is a sorcerer who is able to shapeshift into a giant stone lion that runs around and roars and kills people. And he's been alone in that city going slowly crazy ever since it was razed to the ground. And he helps the magic wielders, this small band of them, he helps them find things in the city because, he's the only one who knows where anything was. In the end, he decides to stay in the city simply because he's hundreds of years old and it's going to catch up with him. So even though he looks like he's in his 40s, he's expecting that he's not going to last much longer because, well, he's a couple hundred years old. The winged horse on the cover is because in the course of this book, Kelene manages to make her horse into a flying horse. They get some eagle wings and they use magic to graft the wings onto the horse, and the horse then manages to fly with those wings, which is so not aerodynamic I can't even. But, magic, so sure. Anyway, this is one of those stories that I hate to call coming of age stories, because I always hate coming of age because it always feels like you're dismissing all of the other things that are happening in a book. But it is a bit of that because it's about Kelene coming into her own and finding out who and what she is. Because I mean, there's a small part of me that is a little bit resentful of the fact that she effectively gets backed into being magic after all. But at the same time, this is about how she finally manages to figure out who she is, because she is a misfit. She doesn't quite fit. She's not, a traditional girly girl type. She likes riding, and while she does a lot of women's work, because as a woman who is known to be a woman in a highly striated culture such as this one, obviously that's what she's going to get stuck doing. But it's about her finding out that she's not just another magic wielder, that she has a very specific talent, that is the healing talent that she can use. It's about her gradually easing up, because one of the things that happens with her is that she's one of those people who gets really angry really easily, really fast. And it's a literary trope to a certain extent that those are the kinds of people who take everything everyone says absolutely in the worst possible way it could be meant. And part of what happens in the course of this is that she manages to sort of dial that back and to stop being as bitter about everything, which allows her, as I said, then to find her own way into things. Another portion of this, though, is talking about Syed, because Tam gets killed by this particular unfortunate plague. So Syed loses his wife of about 20 years, and a portion of this is, it's a bit of a delving into depression, because Syed winds up, yes, wife dies, he's sad, but he winds up spending part of this feeling just physically tired all the time, and like he can't really care about anything, and sort of forcing himself to do stuff, not to mention he volunteers to go on the run to Moytura, mainly because he's depressed and is figuring he doesn't have anything to lose, except, of course, his son, who winds up coming along with him. But, either his son stays where the plague is, or his son comes with him, and either way, there's a risk. So, that kind of doesn't matter. Anyway, this book is a bit of an in-between, but it does a very nice job of picking up where the last one left off and not leaving you feeling disappointed about it. And because a lot of sequels can do that. And I am now coming up on the end of my time, so I guess I will see you all next week.